In the heart of bustling Manhattan, inside a towering skyscraper filled with corporate suits and shiny desks, there was an elderly woman who went almost unnoticed. Her name was Maria Rodriguez, and she worked as a janitor in the building. Every morning, at exactly 6 a.m., Maria would push open the heavy glass doors of the office, her worn-out sneakers squeaking softly against the polished marble floors. She carried her mop, bucket, and cleaning supplies like it was second nature to her. Because, after decades of doing this job, it really was. Maria wasn't tall or flashy. She didn't wear expensive clothes or carry a fancy briefcase. Instead, she wore a faded uniform that had seen better days, patched up here and there to keep it going just a little longer. Her hands were calloused from years of scrubbing floors and wiping down surfaces. Her hair, streaked with gray, was always tied back neatly into a bun, tucked away under a scarf to keep it out of her face while she worked. To most people in the office, Maria was invisible, a background figure who existed only to make sure the bathrooms smelled fresh and the trash bins were emptied on time. But what no one realized, and what they never bothered to ask about, was that behind Maria's quiet demeanor lay a mind sharper than anyone could have imagined. Born into poverty in a small village in Mexico, Maria had grown up dreaming of seeing the world. Life hadn't been easy for her. As a child, she helped her parents work the fields, often skipping school to bring home extra income. But even then, Maria had a hunger, not for food, but for knowledge. She loved learning new things, especially languages. When she was barely a teenager, Maria started teaching herself Spanish properly, mastering its grammar and vocabulary until she sounded like she'd stepped right out of a textbook. Then she moved on to English, practicing by listening to American radio stations late at night when everyone else was asleep. Over time, her curiosity took her further. Whenever someone passed through their village, a traveler, a merchant, a missionary, Maria would strike up conversations, picking up bits and pieces of their language. By the time she left Mexico in her early 20s, she could already speak 5 languages fluently. And that was just the beginning. Maria's journey to New York City was long and difficult. She worked odd jobs wherever she could find them in Europe, Africa, Asia, picking up more languages along the way. Each country she visited added another layer to her story. In France, she learned how to roll her R's perfectly in French. In Egypt, she picked up Arabic, marveling at the beauty of its script. In Kenya, Swahili became part of her repertoire, thanks to the kindness of local shopkeepers who patiently corrected her pronunciation. By the time she finally settled in New York, Maria could speak 17 languages effortlessly, switching between them as easily as flipping channels on a TV. Despite all this, Maria kept her talents hidden. In New York, she took the janitorial job because it offered steady pay and allowed her to live quietly. The office where she worked was full of high-powered executives, tech wizards, and marketing gurus, all chasing promotions, bonuses, and recognition. Maria didn't want any of that. She preferred staying in the shadows, content with her simple life. Besides, she figured no one would care about her skills anyway. After all, why would a multinational corporation need a janitor who spoke 17 languages? The other employees certainly didn't seem interested. Most of them walked past Maria without so much as a glance, treating her like part of the furniture. Some were polite enough to nod or say thank you when she cleaned their workspace, but others weren't so kind. There were whispers in the break room, snickers behind closed doors. They called her the old lady with the mop, mocking her slow pace and outdated uniform. No one stopped to think about who she really was or where she came from. To them, she was just a faceless worker whose sole purpose was to clean up after them. One particularly chaotic week, tensions ran high. In the office, the company was preparing for a big international conference and employees were running around like headless chickens trying to get everything ready. In the corner of the room, a group of executives huddled near the water cooler, complaining loudly about how hard it was to communicate with overseas clients. One of them threw up his hands in frustration, saying, "If only we had someone who actually knew these languages." Maria happened to be nearby, sweeping the floor. She paused, for a moment gripping the handle of her broom tightly. She wanted to speak up, to tell them that she could help, but something held her back. What if they laughed at her? What if they thought she was lying? So instead, she stayed silent, continuing to sweep as if nothing had happened. Little did anyone know change was lurking just around the corner. Maria's secret was about to come out, not because she chose to reveal it, but because fate had other plans. And once the truth came to light, nothing in that office would ever be the same again. The chaos in the office reached a fever pitch the following Monday morning. The company's CEO, a man known for his sharp suits and sharper decisions, was pacing anxiously outside the conference room. Jonathan, as he was called, had spent years building this company into a global powerhouse. But today all that success felt like it might crumble because of one glaring oversight. They didn't have an interpreter. A major international meeting was about to begin, with representatives from over 30 countries waiting on the other side of a video call. This wasn't just any meeting. It was a chance to secure partnerships that could skyrocket the company's growth. But there was a problem. The professional interpreter they'd hired for the event hadn't shown up. No explanation, no apology. Just silence on the other end of the phone when they tried calling. Panic rippled through the office as employees scrambled to find a solution. Some suggested using translation apps, while others proposed delaying the meeting altogether. None of the options seemed viable. As Jonathan stood there, running his fingers through his hair, he noticed Maria nearby. She was quietly mopping the hallway, her movements deliberate and unhurried. He'd seen her around before but never paid much attention. Today, though, desperation made him think differently. Clearing his throat, he approached her cautiously. "Excuse me," he said, his voice tinged with urgency. "Do you happen to know anyone who speaks multiple languages? We're in quite the bind." Maria stopped mid-motion, the mop handle still, clutched in her hands. For a moment she hesitated, unsure whether to speak or stay silent. Then almost instinctively she replied, not in English but in perfect French. "Monsieur, je peux vous aider?" "Sir, I can help you." Jonathan froze, his eyes widening in disbelief. He blinked once, twice, trying to process what he'd just heard. Before he could respond, Maria switched smoothly to German, then Spanish, and finally back to English. "I speak many languages," she said softly, her tone calm but firm. "If you need someone to interpret, I can do it." For a few seconds, Jonathan simply stared at her, unable to believe what was happening. Here was this woman whom he'd barely acknowledged until now, offering to step into the biggest crisis of the week. It sounded too good to be true, but something in her demeanor told him she wasn't bluffing. Without wasting another second, he gestured for her to follow him into the conference room. Inside, the atmosphere was tense. The video call had already started, and faces from across the globe filled the screen. Representatives from Japan, Brazil, Germany, and several African nations were waiting patiently, or not so patiently, for the discussion to begin. Jonathan quickly explained the situation, introducing Maria as their interpreter for the day. There were murmurs of surprise, even skepticism, but time was running out. They had no choice but to trust her. What happened next left everyone speechless. As the conversation unfolded, Maria proved herself to be nothing short of extraordinary. She listened intently to each speaker, absorbing their words in whatever language they chose to use. Whether it was Mandarin, Russian, Arabic, or Swahili, she translated flawlessly, her voice steady and confident. Not once did she stumble or hesitate. Instead, she bridged gaps between cultures and continents with ease, making the dialogue flow seamlessly. At one point, a representative from China raised a question about logistics, using technical jargon specific to his industry. Maria didn't miss a beat. She translated the query accurately, adding context where necessary to ensure everyone understood. Later, when a delegate from Kenya expressed concerns about cultural misunderstandings, Maria responded in fluent Swahili, earning nods of approval from the screen. By the end of the hour-long session, the mood in the room had shifted entirely. What had started as a disaster was now a triumph, and it was all thanks to Maria. When the meeting concluded, the room erupted in applause. Even the executives who had earlier dismissed Maria as just a janitor couldn't hide their astonishment. One of them leaned over to Jonathan and whispered, "Where did you find her?" Jonathan shook his head, still processing everything himself. He turned to Maria, who stood quietly by the door, looking almost embarrassed by the sudden attention. "Thank you," he said sincerely. "You saved us today. How is this possible? Where did you learn to speak so many languages?" Maria smiled faintly, her expression softening. "It's a long story," she replied, "but I've always loved learning new things. Languages are like windows. They let you see the world from different perspectives." Her humility only added to the awe-inspiring moment. For the first time, the people in that room saw Maria not as a faceless worker, but as a person with incredible depth and talent, someone who had been hiding in plain sight, waiting for the right opportunity to shine. Later that afternoon, Jonathan invited Maria to his office for a private conversation. He wanted to hear more about her life, to understand how someone with such remarkable abilities ended up sweeping floors in his building. Over coffee, Maria opened up, sharing pieces of her journey that few had ever heard. She spoke about growing up in a small village in Mexico, where opportunities were scarce but dreams were plenty. She told him how she taught herself languages out of curiosity and necessity, traveling to different countries whenever she could scrape together enough money. From Europe to Africa to Asia, she absorbed cultures and dialects like a sponge, driven by an insatiable thirst for knowledge. Eventually, she settled in New York, taking the janitorial job because it offered stability. It wasn't glamorous, but it allowed her to live quietly and focus on what mattered most to her. As Maria talked, Jonathan found himself deeply moved. He realized that Maria's story wasn't just inspiring, it was humbling. Here was a woman who had accomplished more than most people could dream of, yet she carried herself with grace and humility. She didn't seek recognition or praise. She simply wanted to contribute in her own way. By the time their conversation ended, Jonathan knew one thing for certain. Maria deserved far more than the role she currently held. Her skills weren't just impressive, they were invaluable to a company striving to expand globally. With that thought in mind, he made a bold decision. "Maria," he said, leaning forward in his chair, "I want to offer you a position as the head of our newly created multilingual communications department. Your expertise is exactly what we need to take this company to the next level." Maria's eyes widened in shock. For a moment, she didn't say anything, overwhelmed by the unexpected proposal. Finally, she managed to stammer, "Me? Are you sure? I'm just a janitor." Jonathan shook his head firmly. "No, you're not just anything. You've already proven yourself today. Let us prove ourselves worthy of your talents." Though hesitant at first, Maria eventually accepted the offer. Deep down, she knew this was an opportunity she couldn't pass up, not just for herself but for the countless others who might benefit from seeing someone like her rise above expectations. And so, with a mix of excitement and trepidation, Maria embarked on a new chapter of her life, one that would change not only her destiny, but also the culture of the entire organization. News of Maria's promotion spread like wildfire through the office. By lunchtime, it felt like everyone was talking about it. Employees gathered in clusters, whispering excitedly, or skeptically, about the elderly janitor who had suddenly become the head of a brand new department. Some were genuinely thrilled, clapping her on the back and telling her how proud they were. Others weren't so kind. A few rolled their eyes or muttered under their breath, questioning whether someone with no formal education or corporate experience deserved such a high-profile role. For Maria, stepping into her new position wasn't easy. She'd spent years blending into the background, avoiding attention at all costs. Now she found herself thrust into the spotlight, with people watching her every move. The weight of expectations pressed down on her shoulders, but Maria refused to let it break her spirit. Instead, she approached the challenge with the same determination that had carried her through life's toughest moments. Her first task was to build a team. Jonathan gave her complete freedom to hire whoever she thought would fit best, but Maria didn't rush the process. She took her time, interviewing candidates carefully and looking for qualities beyond just technical skill. To her, communication wasn't just about speaking different languages. It was about understanding cultures, showing empathy, and bridging divides. She wanted people who shared her passion for connection, regardless of their background. One of the first hires was a young intern named Sophia, who reminded Maria of herself at that age. Sophia came from a working-class family and had taught herself 3 languages using online resources. Though inexperienced, she radiated enthusiasm and creativity. Maria saw potential in her and decided to give her a chance. Over time, Sophia became one of Maria's closest allies, helping her navigate the complexities of corporate life while bringing fresh ideas to the table. As the multilingual communications department began to take shape, Maria introduced innovative strategies to improve the company's global outreach. She started by revamping the way employees communicated with international clients. Gone were the days of relying solely on translators or generic emails. Under Maria's leadership, the team developed personalized approaches tailored to each culture. For example, when dealing with Japanese partners, they emphasized politeness and formality in their interactions. When reaching out to Brazilian clients, they incorporated warmth and humor into their messages. These small adjustments made a big difference, earning praise from overseas collaborators and boosting the company's reputation. Maria also launched a mentorship program aimed at nurturing young talent within the organization. Every Friday afternoon, she held workshops where employees could learn basic phrases in different languages or gain insights into cross-cultural etiquette. At first, attendance was low. Many doubted whether these sessions would be useful. But as word spread about how engaging and informative they were, more and more people started showing up. Even senior executives dropped by occasionally, eager to pick up tips from the woman who had once been invisible to them. Despite her growing influence, Maria remained humble. She continued wearing her favorite cardigan to work, even though colleagues encouraged her to dress more formally. "This is who I am," she'd say with a smile whenever someone commented on it. And while she now had an office with a desk and a nameplate, she often preferred walking around the building, checking in with her team and chatting with old friends from her janitorial days. Those friendships meant the world to her. They were a reminder of where she came from and how far she'd come. Of course, not everything went smoothly. There were bumps along the way, moments when doubt crept in. Some employees resented Maria's rise to prominence, especially those who felt overshadowed by her overnight success. They whispered behind closed doors, calling her appointment unfair or accusing her of being unqualified. One particularly vocal executive even went so far as to question her decisions during a board meeting, implying that her lack of a degree made her unfit for the job. Maria handled these criticisms with grace, refusing to let negativity consume her. Instead, she focused on proving her worth through action. When the same executive faced difficulties negotiating a deal with a French client, Maria stepped in without hesitation. Within minutes, she resolved the issue, demonstrating both her linguistic prowess and her deep understanding of cultural nuances. Afterward, the executive apologized, admitting that he'd underestimated her capabilities. Outside the office, Maria's story began attracting attention beyond the company walls. Local newspapers picked up on the tale of the janitor-turned-executive, publishing articles that highlighted her journey and achievements. Social media buzzed with reactions, ranging from admiration to disbelief. Some praised her as a symbol of resilience and untapped potential, while others dismissed her success as a fluke. Trolls hiding behind computer screens mocked her appearance and questioned the authenticity of her skills. But Maria chose not to engage with any of it. She knew better than to waste energy on things she couldn't control. What mattered most to her was the impact she was making, not just within the company, but in the lives of those around her. Young professionals looked up to her as proof that hard work and perseverance could lead to extraordinary opportunities. Immigrant workers saw her as a beacon of hope, reminding them that their unique talents and experiences had value, even if society sometimes failed to recognize it. And for the older generation, Maria represented the idea that it's never too late to chase your dreams or redefine your purpose. One evening, after a long day at work, Maria sat alone in her office, reflecting on everything that had happened. She thought about the little girl she used to be, the one who dreamed of seeing the world despite having nothing. She thought about the struggles she endured, the sacrifices she made, and the joy she found in learning new languages. Most importantly, she thought about the people who had supported her along the way, the strangers who welcomed her into their homes, the mentors who believed in her potential, and the colleagues who stood by her side even when others doubted. Her tears welled up in her eyes, but they weren't tears of sadness. They were tears of gratitude for the life she'd built, the challenges she'd overcome, and the legacy she hoped to leave behind. Maria knew she still had a lot of work ahead of her, but for the first time in a long time, she felt truly seen. Not just as a janitor, not just as a multilingual interpreter, but as a human being with a story worth telling. The transformation didn't stop with Maria. Slowly but surely, the culture of the entire organization began to shift. Employees started treating each other with more respect, recognizing that everyone had something valuable to contribute, regardless of their title or background. Conversations became more inclusive, decisions more thoughtful, and relationships more genuine. It was as if Maria's presence had planted a seed of change, a reminder that greatness often hides in unexpected places, waiting for the right moment to bloom. And so, with quiet determination and unwavering kindness, Maria continued to lead by example. She proved that success isn't measured by wealth or status, but by the positive impact you have on the world around you. Her journey was far from over, but she embraced each new challenge with the same courage and humility that had brought her this far. Little did she know the best was yet to come. As weeks turned into months, Maria settled into her new role with a mix of determination and humility. She knew the challenges ahead wouldn't be easy, but she was ready to face them head-on. Leading the multilingual communications department wasn't just about translating languages. It was about building bridges between people from different corners of the world. And for someone who had spent her life doing exactly that, it felt like the perfect fit. Maria's leadership style was unlike anything the company had seen before. She didn't bark orders or demand results. Instead, she led by listening. Every morning, she'd walk through the office, stopping to chat with team members about their projects, ideas, and even personal lives. She wanted to know what motivated them, what scared them, and how she could help them grow. Her approach made people feel valued, like they were more than just cogs in a machine. For many employees, this was a refreshing change, and it showed in their work. One of the first major initiatives Maria introduced was a series of training sessions designed to teach employees the basics of cross-cultural communication. These weren't your typical corporate seminars filled with PowerPoint slides and dry lectures. Instead, Maria turned them into interactive experiences, using real-life scenarios to drive home her points. For example, during one session, she brought in a traditional tea set from Morocco and explained the significance of sharing mint tea in Middle Eastern culture. In some places, she said with a warm smile, business isn't done until you've shared a cup of tea together. Workshops quickly became popular, not just among her own department but across the entire organization. Employees started applying what they learned in their daily interactions, whether it was adjusting their tone when speaking to Japanese clients or understanding the importance of punctuality in German negotiations. Over time, these small changes added up, improving relationships and boosting the company's reputation on the global stage. But Maria didn't stop there. She also implemented a mentorship program aimed at empowering underrepresented groups within the company. Many of the participants were young professionals from immigrant families or low-income backgrounds, people who reminded Maria of herself at their age. Through the program, they received guidance not only in their careers but also in navigating the often intimidating world of corporate culture. Maria made sure to pair each mentee with a senior employee who could offer support and advice, creating a sense of community that hadn't existed before. Her efforts paid off in unexpected ways. One mentee, a young man named Carlos, came from a family of factory workers and had always struggled to find his place in the corporate world. Under Maria's guidance, he discovered a passion for international marketing and eventually landed a promotion to lead a key project. When he thanked her for believing in him, Maria simply smiled and said, "You did all the hard work. I just helped you see what you were capable of." Despite her successes, Maria faced resistance from certain quarters. A handful of executives still resented her rapid rise to power, viewing her as an outsider who didn't belong in their elite circle. They questioned her decisions, criticized her methods, and even tried to undermine her authority whenever possible. At first, Maria found these attacks disheartening. After years of being invisible, she now found herself in the uncomfortable position of being a target. But rather than retaliate or dwell on the negativity, she chose to rise above it. She focused on proving her worth through action, letting her results speak for themselves. When the company secured a groundbreaking partnership with a Middle Eastern conglomerate, a deal made possible entirely by Maria's nuanced understanding of Arabic customs and language, her critics fell silent. Even those who had once doubted her began to acknowledge her contributions, albeit reluctantly. Maria's ability to handle adversity with grace earned her respect not just within the company but also outside its walls. Local media outlets continued to cover her story, highlighting her journey from janitor to executive. The narrative captured the public's imagination, inspiring countless individuals who saw themselves in her struggles and triumphs. Letters poured in from people around the country, thanking Maria for reminding them that it's never too late to chase their dreams. Some wrote to share their own stories of overcoming hardship, while others sought advice on how to break free from limiting circumstances. Maria read every message, touched by the outpouring of support. Yet despite the accolades and attention, Maria remained grounded. She refused to let fame go to her head, insisting that her job was no different now than it had been when she was mopping floors. "I'm still the same person," she'd say with a chuckle whenever someone asked how she managed to stay so humble. "Just because I have a fancier title doesn't mean I've changed." Her humility endeared her even more to her colleagues. People who had once dismissed her as just a janitor now went out of their way to express their admiration. Some apologized for their past behavior, admitting that they had underestimated her. Maria accepted their apologies graciously, choosing not to hold grudges. "We all make mistakes," she'd say. "What matters is that we learn from them." Outside of work, Maria continued to live a simple life. She rented a modest apartment in Queens where she spent her evenings reading books, writing letters, or watching documentaries about faraway places. On weekends, she volunteered at a local community center, teaching English to immigrants and helping them adjust to life in America. To her, giving back was just as important as achieving success. "I've been blessed with opportunities," she often said. "It's my responsibility to pass that blessing along." As the months passed, Maria's impact on the company grew deeper. Beyond improving communication strategies and expanding global partnerships, she sparked a cultural shift that rippled through every level of the organization. Employees began treating each other with more kindness and empathy, recognizing that everyone had unique talents and perspectives to offer. Conversations became less transactional and more meaningful, fostering a sense of unity that had been missing before. Even the office environment reflected this change. Bulletin boards once filled with memos and performance charts now featured photos of team outings, quotes about diversity and inclusion, and notes of gratitude exchanged between colleagues. It was as if Maria's presence had infused the workplace with a renewed sense of purpose, a reminder that business wasn't just about profits, but about people. By the end of her first year in the role, Maria had transformed not only the department, she led but the entire company itself. What had started as a crisis-turned opportunity had evolved into something much greater, a movement toward inclusivity, understanding, and mutual respect. And though she never sought recognition for her efforts, she couldn't deny the profound satisfaction she felt, knowing that she had made a difference. Looking back, Maria realized that her journey hadn't been about proving herself to others. It had been about staying true to herself. No matter where life took her, she had always followed her heart, embracing challenges with courage and treating others with compassion. That unwavering authenticity was what had carried her through the darkest times and brought her to where she stood today. And yet Maria knew her story wasn't finished. There were still lessons to learn, connections to forge, and barriers to break. As she looked toward the future, she felt a quiet excitement bubbling inside her, a sense that the best chapters of her life were yet to come. As Maria's influence continued to grow, so did the challenges she faced. While many people celebrated her achievements and respected her leadership, there were still pockets of resistance within the company. Some senior executives resented the attention she received, feeling that their own contributions were being overshadowed by a woman who had once been just a janitor. They whispered behind closed doors, questioning whether someone without formal education or decades of corporate experience truly deserved such a prominent role. Their criticism wasn't subtle. During meetings, they would challenge her decisions, often framing their objections as concerns about best practices or established protocols. On one occasion, an executive publicly questioned why the company needed a whole department dedicated to multilingual communications when translation software could handle most tasks. The comment stung, but Maria didn't let it show. Instead, she calmly explained how language was more than just words. It carried culture, emotion, and nuance that no machine could replicate. She gave examples of deals that had fallen through because of misunderstandings caused by automated translations, emphasizing the human touch required for effective communication. Despite these hurdles, Maria refused to let negativity derail her mission. She leaned on her team for support, drawing strength from their shared vision of creating a more connected and inclusive workplace. Her assistant, Sophia, became particularly instrumental during this time. Together, they developed strategies to counteract skepticism, presenting data and case studies that demonstrated the value of their work. Over time, even the harshest critics began to soften, not because they changed their minds overnight, but because the results spoke for themselves. Outside the office, Maria's story continued to capture public imagination. Media coverage of her journey expanded beyond local newspapers to national outlets, sparking conversations about diversity, inclusion, and untapped potential in the workforce. Social media played a big role in amplifying her message, with hashtags like Can Maria, the multilingual, and a hidden talent trending across platforms. People posted videos of her interviews, memes celebrating her accomplishments, and heartfelt messages thanking her for inspiring them to pursue their passions despite obstacles. But not all reactions were positive. Trolls hiding behind anonymous accounts attacked her online, mocking her appearance, age, and background. Comments ranged from cruel jabs about her worn-out uniform to accusations that she had fabricated her abilities. For every supportive message, there seemed to be another filled with hate. At first, Maria found it difficult to ignore. She spent sleepless nights wondering why people felt the need to tear others down instead of lifting them up. But eventually, she realized something important. The negativity wasn't about her. It was about the insecurities of those who spread it. With this newfound perspective, Maria decided to tackle the issue head-on. She accepted an invitation to speak at a major conference focused on workplace equality and innovation. Standing before hundreds of attendees, she shared her story openly, acknowledging both the triumphs and the struggles. "I know what it feels like to be invisible," she said, her voice steady and sincere. "I've been dismissed, underestimated, and mocked. But I've also learned that you can't let other people define your worth. If you have a gift, share it. If you see injustice, speak up. And if someone tells you that you don't belong, prove them wrong, not out of spite, but because you owe it to yourself." Her speech earned a standing ovation, leaving many in tears. Afterward, dozens of people approached her to thank her for putting into words what they had struggled to articulate. A young woman told Maria how hearing her story gave her the courage to apply for a promotion she'd been too afraid to pursue. An older man confessed that he'd almost given up on his dream of writing a book until he saw Maria's resilience inspire millions. These moments reminded Maria why she kept pushing forward, even when the road got rough. Back at the office, Maria channeled her energy into mentoring and empowering others. She expanded her mentorship program to include not only young professionals, but also mid-career employees looking to pivot into new roles. One participant, a middle-aged woman who had worked in accounting for over 2 decades, decided to take a leap of faith and transition into international relations after attending Maria's workshops. With Maria's guidance, she retrained herself in diplomatic protocols and secured a position managing cross-border partnerships. When she thanked Maria for believing in her potential, Maria simply smiled and said, "You already had everything inside you. I just helped you see it." Maria also made it a priority to give back to the community. Every Saturday morning, she volunteered at a local nonprofit that provided free language classes to immigrants and refugees. Many of her students came from war-torn countries carrying little more than hope for a better future. Teaching them reminded Maria of her own journey, the hunger for knowledge, the struggle to adapt, and the joy of finding belonging in a foreign land. She encouraged her students to embrace their unique identities, telling them, "Your story is your strength. Don't ever let anyone make you feel ashamed of where you come from." Her efforts didn't go unnoticed. The company took notice of her volunteer work and decided to partner with the nonprofit, offering resources and funding to expand its programs. This collaboration marked a turning point in how the organization viewed its role in society, not just as a profit-driven entity, but as a force for good. Employees rallied behind the initiative, organizing fundraisers, donation drives, and awareness campaigns. It was as if Maria's compassion had sparked a chain reaction, inspiring everyone around her to think bigger and act kinder. By the end of her 2nd year in the role, Maria had cemented her legacy as a transformative leader. Her multilingual communications department had become one of the company's most valuable assets, driving growth and fostering meaningful connections with partners worldwide. More importantly, she had reshaped the culture of the entire organization, instilling values of empathy, inclusivity, and respect. People no longer saw colleagues as mere titles or job descriptions. They saw them as individuals with stories worth hearing and talents worth nurturing. Yet, Maria never lost sight of her roots. Despite her success, she remained humble, treating everyone, from interns to CEOs, with the same warmth and kindness. She still wore her favorite cardigan to work, still greeted the security guards by name, and still joked that she missed sweeping floors sometimes. To her, none of the accolades mattered as much as the relationships she built along the way. Reflecting on her journey, Maria realized that the greatest reward wasn't the promotions, the recognition, or even the impact she'd made on the company. It was the ripple effect she'd created, the countless lives she'd touched directly or indirectly, by choosing to believe in herself and others. Whether it was a student learning their first English phrase, a colleague discovering confidence they didn't know they had, or a stranger finding inspiration in her story, Maria knew that her work extended far beyond the walls of the office, and while she understood that challenges would always exist, she faced them with the same quiet determination that had carried her this far. Life, she believed, was like language, full of complexities, contradictions, and endless possibilities. All you had to do was keep listening, keep learning, and keep moving forward. Because somewhere out there, someone might be waiting to hear exactly what you have to say. Years passed, and Maria eventually decided it was time to step away from the corporate world. She had poured her heart and soul into the company for nearly a decade, transforming not only the organization but also the lives of countless individuals along the way. Though she wasn't ready to stop learning or contributing, she knew it was time to pass the torch, to let others carry forward the work she had started. Her retirement announcement came as a shock to many. Employees gathered in the office atrium on her last day, filling the space with laughter, tears, and heartfelt speeches. Some shared funny stories about how Maria once corrected their pronunciation during a meeting, while others spoke about how her mentorship had changed the course of their careers. Even Jonathan, the CEO who had first recognized her talents, stood up to thank her. "Maria," he said, his voice thick with emotion, "you didn't just save us that day in the conference room. You taught us what it means to truly value people. This company, and all of us, will never be the same because of you." Maria listened quietly, her eyes glistening as she took in the love and gratitude surrounding her. When it was her turn to speak, she kept her words simple yet profound. I didn't do any of this alone, she said, looking around at the sea of faces. Each of you has been part of my journey, whether you realized it or not. You've taught me patience, courage, and the power of connection. And now, I hope you'll continue to share those lessons with the world. Though Maria left the company, her impact lingered like an echo that refused to fade. In her honor, the organization established the Maria Rodriguez Scholarship Fund, aimed at supporting underprivileged individuals pursuing careers in international relations, linguistics, and cross-cultural communication. Every year, recipients were invited to attend a special ceremony where they heard Maria's story and received personalized advice from her. Many of these scholars went on to achieve incredible things, carrying her legacy into new corners of the globe. In her retirement, Maria embraced life with the same curiosity and passion that had defined her earlier years. She traveled extensively, revisiting places she'd loved and exploring destinations she'd always dreamed of seeing. From the bustling streets of Tokyo to the serene landscapes of New Zealand, she soaked in every experience, picking up new phrases and cultural insights wherever she went. Her journal became a treasure trove of memories filled with sketches, notes, and reflections on the beauty of human connection. Back home in Queens, Maria spent her days writing memoirs, volunteering, and mentoring young professionals who reached out to her for guidance. Her apartment soon became a hub of activity, with visitors dropping by to seek advice, share stories, or simply enjoy her company. Despite her busy schedule, she always made time for those who needed her, offering wisdom rooted in humility and kindness. Success isn't about titles or money, she often told them. It's about making someone's day a little brighter, helping them see their own potential, and leaving the world better than you found it. Maria's story continued to inspire people far beyond her immediate circle. Documentaries, books, and even a feature film were made about her journey, bringing her message of resilience and inclusivity to audiences worldwide. The film, titled The Janitor Who Spoke 17 Languages, became a box office hit, resonating with viewers of all ages and backgrounds. Critics praised its portrayal of Maria's humanity, noting how it challenged stereotypes and celebrated the hidden talents within ordinary people. But perhaps the most touching tributes came from those who encountered Maria personally. A young girl named Rosa, whose family had recently immigrated from Guatemala, wrote a letter thanking Maria for visiting her school and sharing her story. "You made me feel proud of where I come from," Rosa wrote. "I used to think being different was bad, but now I know it's my superpower." Another note arrived from a man in his 60s who had watched one of Maria's interviews late one night while battling depression. "Your words gave me hope," he confessed. "They reminded me that no matter how old we are, we can still make a difference." Through it all, Maria remained grounded, refusing to let fame define her. She continued living modestly, finding joy in small pleasures like morning coffee, handwritten letters, and long walks through the park. To her, happiness wasn't about grand gestures or material wealth. It was about connection, purpose, and gratitude. "Every day is a gift," she liked to say. "And if you live with that mindset, you'll never run out of reasons to smile." As the years rolled on, Maria's health began to decline, but her spirit remained unshaken. Even in her final days, she stayed engaged with the world, listening to foreign radio broadcasts, reading novels in different languages, and exchanging letters with friends across the globe. When she passed away peacefully at the age of 82, the news spread quickly, touching hearts around the world. Tributes poured in from former colleagues, mentees, and strangers alike, each one expressing gratitude for the light she had brought into their lives. At her memorial service, held in a cozy community center she had frequented for years, hundreds of people gathered to celebrate her extraordinary journey. Speakers included former students, co-workers, and even a representative from the United Nations who credited Maria's work with inspiring global initiatives focused on multilingualism and cultural understanding. But the most moving tribute came from Sophia, her former assistant, who delivered a eulogy that captured the essence of Maria's legacy. "Maria wasn't just a janitor, a leader, or a mentor," Sophia said, her voice trembling with emotion. "She was a bridge, a person who connected worlds, broke barriers, and reminded us of our shared humanity. She showed us that greatness isn't something you're born with, It's something you create, moment by moment, choice by choice. And she proved that no matter who you are or where you come from, your voice matters. Your story matters. After the service, attendees released balloons into the sky, each one carrying a note written in a different language. The messages ranged from simple expressions of love to heartfelt promises to carry forward Maria's mission. As the balloons drifted upward, disappearing into the clouds, it felt like a fitting farewell, a celebration of a life lived fully, beautifully, and without limits. Today, Maria's story continues to resonate, reminding us that true value lies, not in appearances or titles, but in the richness of the human spirit. She taught us to look beyond the surface, to listen deeply, and to believe in the untapped potential within ourselves and others. Her journey proves that greatness often hides in plain sight, and that when we take the time to notice, we might just discover something extraordinary. And so, the woman once mocked as just a janitor became a beacon of hope, proving that everyone has a story worth hearing, and gifts worth sharing if only we take the time to listen.